Allegations that he kissed and groped a 17-year-old girl at a New Year's party 5 years ago. Police investigated that claim at the time and decided not to press charges. But when the allegations surfaced again recently, Johnson again denied them, but apparently believed he had no way out. Was Dan Johnson guilty? We can't say, and now that he's dead, we will likely never know. Meanwhile, yesterday, TV show host Tavis Smiley had his PBS program pulled off the air after claims of misconduct were leveled against him. Smiley responded by denying all the allegations. What's interesting is what Smiley says about the process that ended his career. PBS, he says, launched an investigation into his behavior without even informing him it was going on. Quote, I learned of the investigation when former staffers started contacting me to share the uncomfortable experience of receiving a phone call from a stranger asking whether I had ever done anything to make them uncomfortable and if they could provide other names of persons to call. PBS investigators refused to review any of my personal documentation, refused to provide me the names of any accusers, refused to speak to my current staff, and refused to provide me any semblance of due process to defend myself against allegations from unknown sources. End quote. Now, that's just Smiley's word, of course. We can't confirm any of that. And for what it's worth, Tavis Smiley has never said anything we agree with politically. But that's not the point. The point is that what began as a noble effort to eliminate sexual harassment from American life, an effort we agree with vehemently, is rapidly turning into something dark and menacing. Innocent people fear persecution, and that's always the hallmark of a witch hunt. Others use allegations to settle scores or gain power, and that's the opposite of justice. The rest of the country looks on bewildered and afraid, unsure of what the new rules are, but certain of the punishment for violating them. It is grotesque. Imagine if you were accused by someone whose name you didn't know of a misdeed you couldn't remember or didn't commit. How would you respond to that? You might go on Facebook to protest your innocence, but would that be enough to get your job back? Would it be enough to regain your reputation or the respect of your children? Probably not. What would you do then? Mark Stein joins us now. Mark, I feel, well, actually so intimidated that I have to say out loud what is obvious, which is I think sexual harassment is abhorrent, obviously, and I think people guilty of it should be punished for it. But I'm starting to be concerned that innocent people are afraid of being hurt, and that's a bad sign. And so the question is, what are the rules? How do we find out what they are? How do you know if you're guilty? What is going on?
Well, realistically, there are no rules. I mean, just to connect it up with the first half of the show, the only serious likelihood of ever getting rid of Bob Mueller and shutting down his investigation, for example, would be if a stenographer said that he'd hugged her inappropriately in 1977. Boom, he'd be gone. He'd be history. He'd be toast. He'd be like these PBS and NPR guys who've had basically 50-year careers vaporized in 24 hours. And what has happened, I think, is what often happens, is the end of any kind of proportion. This started with Harvey Weinstein, who has been credibly accused by actresses on at least 3 continents of rape or brutal sexual assault. And there are names, and there are dates, and there are places backing up those accusations. As I said, actresses from New Zealand, from France, from the United Kingdom, the United States, Canada, all over the map with names. Suddenly, that has morphed into a general accusation by someone you don't know is enough to end your career. Garrison Keillor, for example, I don't care for Garrison Keillor any more than you care for Tavis Smiley. I met him, he was on my BBC show 25 years ago, and he was a cold fish and deeply unpleasant. But I feel about him the way you feel about Tavis Smiley. If he's going to just be vaporized and have his life's work wiped out, at the very least, we should know what he did and who he did it to.
So why is nobody saying that?
Well, I think there's a general agreement on the left, and this has been essentially driven by left-wing dominated industries, that they're now weaponizing sex the way they've weaponized race. that it's a useful, that they've concluded it's a useful weapon to them, and that necessarily means a kind of clearing out the decks. I mean, I'm astonished, you know, on the vast empty plains of the PBS and NPR schedules, you can actually hunt buffalo there. All the septuagenarian hosts have been gone, just gone in moments. And it's absolutely astonishing to me, and it will in the end make social relations impossible. You must think, as I think occasionally, do I really want to be alone with a female employee now?
I think that all the time.
Who knows how she's going to feel about it in 30 years' time? I mean, I don't think that's necessarily in the interests of women in the workplace. I don't think it's in the interests of social relations. It's an insane moral panic that started with genuine rape, genuine violence, genuine power issues, and now just seems to have degenerated into one anonymous accusation can end a career.
So I wonder why, I mean, again, I think it's always valuable and virtuous to make sure the guilty are punished. That's what justice is. But I also think that journalists play a role in this, and that they ought to be the responsible parties in these stories. And maybe somebody should pull back a little bit and make certain that the allegations are true, and that the process is transparent before destroying people's careers and reputations. But they're not doing that.
Well, I think one reason they're not doing that is because essentially it's their business that is being clobbered. Basically, TV and motion pictures are two of the most desirable businesses to be in. There are far more attractive women wanting to work in those industries than in any other industries on the planet. I live in far northern New Hampshire, and the local feed store does not have a casting couch, because if you said to a comely young lady, you know, there could be a really good job as night clerk here if you play your cards right, she'd laugh in your face and go off and do something else. But there's no, but in television and in motion pictures, there is the supply far outpaces demand.
No, that's absolutely true. No, it is a perfect environment for misdeeds like this. It's just that
that's right.
Not everyone accused is guilty. Mark Stein, thank you for your wisdom as always.
Thanks a lot, Tucker.